Hello, folks. So welcome back to our show this morning. And of course, we're in the mark for our first talk show of the day. Let me ask you first, though, P. How many languages do you speak?
Well, two. I don't know, even my bahasa is still a little bit wobbly from time to time, but yes, at least two.
No, it's getting better, though, than the
It's
first
getting
time
a lot
that I
better.
knew you a
It's been
decade
20
ago. Now, did you know there's a term for people who are fluent in many languages? They are called polyglots.
That's right, and this is something new to me as well. Now, joining us today is Erdipa Wiratama from Polyglot Indonesia. Good morning, Deepa. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So, our first question,
Yeah, of course.
how many languages do you speak?
Well, good enough, 5 officially, but I'm currently learning a 6th one. So in terms of proficiency, I would say the first one would be French.
Okay.
English, obviously. Indonesian, only in 3rd position. And then my Persian's quite good. German, and I'm learning Spanish.
All right.
Wow, okay.
So we want, of course, for you to introduce yourself in all those languages, please.
All the language.
Yes.
Okay, so where do I start?
We're gonna, prepare our text so that we know what
Okay,
you're
okay.
saying.
Okay.
So, I think I...
Starting from French, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
French, okay.
Okay, starting from...
Donc, bonjour à tous, je m'appelle Erdipa, je suis un membre de Polyglot Indonesia et ce matin nous sommes avec le programme See Today News.
Oui.
Should I basically repeat myself in different
Yes,
languages? Or just
like-
continue?
Okay, your second was...
German, right?
No, the second
No.
one was...
There was,
proficiency.
so the French, English, Indonesian, Persian.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So
Okay.
Persian
we can
first?
we can go to Persian
Yeah,
then. Yeah.
Persian,
We'll skip
yes.
the next two. Okay.
So betun bakhair man Erdipa هستم. من امروز صبح ما با برنامه See Today News و میخوایم درباره چند زبانی حرف بزنم.
What a beautiful language.
I know it is.
Sounds amazing.
It's not like, it doesn't sound Middle Eastern, and it was like one of the few cultural things that I had to like realize, because I was expecting like something like really Middle Eastern.
Right.
Turns out it's like a little bit more exotic, you know.
Okay. So what is
Alright.
what is the
German,
fifth
right,
position?
next?
German.
German.
Right. We'll do German.
Okay, guten Tag, guten Morgen. Ich bin Erdipa Wiratama und wir sind mit dem Televisionsprogramm See Today News und heute wir sprechen about Polyglot. My German is kind of rusty.
That's okay.
Okay.
Hey, I mean, it's only your fifth best language. Yeah, well done, well done.
Yay! Now a little bit of Spanish. Buenos dias.
Buenos días, soy Erdipa y hoy somos con la programa de televisión See Today News y hoy hablamos desde Polyglot.
So you're quite proficient, but you're just still learning.
I still do mistakes, like you said in Bahasa and
Yeah.
English. We all do like micro mistakes throughout the day, but it's like those little mistakes that kind of can propel you forward anyway. So it's
Of course.
when learning a language, people are always like discouraged about making language or sounding dumb, like I just did literally a few seconds
Like
ago.
making mistakes, basically,
Yeah,
right?
But it's like those little things that kind of like, one, cement your confidence, and two, you don't get better without making mistakes. So it's a natural process that you should
Right.
absolutely not be embarrassed about.
This is
Yeah.
how I learned
I love
Bahasa
that.
Indonesia, by the way. When I first moved here, I met some friends who wanted to speak English and learn to speak English. I said, let's make a deal. You speak to me in English, and it can be broken English. I don't care. They're like, yeah, but I'll
Right.
make mistakes. I'm like, I don't care. I'll fix your mistakes, and you fix
Yes.
mine. And we would have this like broken conversation, but we got better over time.
No, that's the thing, because that's basically how I learned to be confident in speaking language. Because basically, I was stuck in that mindset, like, okay, I had a base of Persian when I was in Iran, but I was like too like malu, too ashamed to speak to people, and be like, no, it's okay, go ahead, you speak like however you feel like it, make all the mistakes you want, and we'll help you. And that's what actually like pushed me forward,
Right.
you know.
So it is a good
To
way to learn.
accelerate yourself.
Absolutely. The environment, how you perceive yourself, where you
Yes.
want to go. It's all like mental factors that contribute to how far you can learn. Actually.
Yeah.
And not only languages, everything basically.
That's right. No, Masiba, I just want to ask, I mean, if people know your background, they're like, of course he knows all these languages because he's been living abroad most of his life. But it's not as easy though, right? For one to kind of learn the language.
Just 'cause you live in a
wherever-
different country doesn't mean you pick up the
Right,
language,
you need to
right?
make that effort for you
That's
to
the
learn.
thing. That's the thing, and it is something I see a lot where I've heard people like living upwards to 10, 15 years, but still have very broken
Yes.
local language. Whereas you have students who study for like 3 years, and because of their outgoing nature, or maybe like they practice it more on a daily basis, they basically become fluent. So there is the learning the language challenge, which is, in my opinion, flat out the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But then there is cultural absorption,
Yes.
how you change as a person with all that, and it doesn't have to be. For example, in Spanish, it doesn't have to be living in Spain or like working in Spain. If you learn Spanish in Indonesia, you have to have a media that kind of like keep the gears turning.
Okay. For example.
Books, movies, series, subtitles on, your settings on your phone.
Yes.
Telenovela.
Telenovela, obviously.
Right?
It's all like factor that to keep the gears turning.
Yeah.
And because of the movie, the book, whatsoever, you're also absorbing a little bit of the culture.
Very true.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, by the way, I had a friend from Bandung. Perfect English. Never spent a day set foot outside Indonesia. I asked, how did you learn your English? He's like, through friends. Watching friends and subtitles.
That's true. Like one of the more well-known, not polyglots, but multilinguals here, like the singer-rapper Rich Brian,
Yes.
Yeah.
learned English only by YouTube.
Never set foot before that. No.
One of the most well-known hyper polyglots in Indonesia. Very young girl, rest in peace. 14 languages, never spent a day outside of Indonesia.
Wow.
14, all via the wonders of internet.
Right.
Okay.
So you
So-
were calling her hyper polyglot?
Hyper polyglot. So
Because?
hyper polyglot. So there is bilingual,
Okay, yes.
trilingual, which is still polyglot, but you know, beyond 3 is polyglot. And I think it's 7 or 8, you can be considered a hyper polyglot.
Oh, wow.
You're
Amazing.
well on your way there. By the way, real quick, I've always wondered, in this case, when you have multiple languages that you can speak, what are your thought process like? Are you processing in one certain language?
That's an amazing question. It depends.
Okay.
I have dreamed in four of my 6 languages, so that's Indonesian, English, French, and Persian. When I'm by myself, when I mumble, when I cook, when I drive, French comes out like with the least resistance.
Okay.
Sometimes English as well, but it depends. It kind of like they're basically like racing to the top position every time. But yeah, English and French, but yeah, so it's.
When you're angry?
Like, yeah, I was going to say, when you're in a stressful position, that's when your real language comes out.
And Mas Deepa will be calling me. I was like, are you mad or are you like saying sweet words to me as of right now? Like I would understand what you're saying.
No, it's like I realize like when my patience is being challenged by the Jakartan traffic, and nobody's next besides me to hold me down. Oh, swearing is swearing in French is absolutely sweet. It flows out of the tongue. It's like you kind of feel happy afterwards, you know.
I always compare it to like, if you stub your toe, what's the first word that comes out of your mouth? Is
Right.
it English? Is it Indonesian? Is it any other language? That's your natural.
And that's basically like, oh, you just gave us a glimpse of your inner person. You be careful.
All right, so it's Monsieur Erdipa then, I guess. So let's talk a little bit about the community.
Yeah.
So there is an Indonesian polyglot community. In fact, I just looked it up. There's Polyglot Indonesia is the Instagram as well.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this.
Yes, please.
Okay, so obviously Polyglot Indonesia is the linguistic-oriented community. It started about 10 years ago, 2013, and it's still going strong right now. We expanded. I mean, there's like multiple communities like spewing. It started in Jakarta, but now we have in Aceh, Palembang, Bandung, Surabaya, Semarang, Denpasar, and even Mataram. And I probably skipped a few. So there's, as communities pop out all throughout Indonesia, there's definitely an interest in learning foreign languages, professional, academic, cultural. The interest is there, and it's growing. So we see, because we are, Polyglot Indonesia is maintained by a few hundreds of volunteers across the city, but a lot of very enthusiastic, like near thousands of members. People are regularly here during our events and stuff like that. So yeah, our main focus is languages, the application of languages, how it changes your life, and not only it's a learning platform, but for me personally it was also kind of like finding back my family, because that's how I, people who understand the woes of like having multiple identities related to language. So that's why I found like, oh, I'm not alone. Hello.
What are
Like
the
family.
woes? I mean, we know all the benefits, but
Yeah.
what would be like one of the downsides? I mean, do you feel like it's hard to call a certain place home because there's so many of the places that you've been to?
On point.
Yeah.
What is home to me?
Right.
It's definitely, I mean, it's here, but the heart says otherwise. But there's a lot of identity crisis, especially when you grow up. You kind of like question yourself. I look Indonesian. My face and my name is very Javanese. But my closest Indonesian friends are like, you're bule, you're not.
Yeah. Really.
The inner, the mindset and everything.
So there's an internal struggle, but it's being overshadowed by the many benefits, obviously.
Interesting perspective.
So, I mean, from languages, you think that do you see the world kind of in a different spectrum because you know you learn these different kind of languages, either people like you and yourself?
So besides the language being a media of communication, of like transferring information from one point to another, it's also, some people will say it's a window to a certain culture, but with a little bit of courage, I would also say that it's a bridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, what I felt when I learned Persian was not only was a window for me to understand no culture, it was also me giving access to that language to change me. There's certain things I do today is because it's the influence from Iran actually, where I learned Persian. Like little habit things. I'm like saying doing this. Like it's not an Indonesian thing, but it's like a very Persian thing to be like, oh, I'm sorry, hope all the best. I hope you're okay and stuff like that. And it's like very little micro behaviors that kind of like that you get from picking left or right. You know?
It's very true. I got a story to share. When I
Yeah.
first moved to Indonesia, I started taking the train. I used to commute between Jakarta and Bandung.
Yes.
And there was a gentleman beside me, and he ordered food. I did not. And I thought it was weird because I had my headphones on, and he called me. I took off my headphones.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm about to eat. I'm like, okay, weird.
Enjoy.
But apparently that's a custom. And
Yeah.
nowadays, me learning the language, I've picked up that custom. So now when I'm around people, I'm about to eat, it's like a politeness thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
I'm about to eat dinner. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, and like, go ahead.
So
right?
yeah,
It's- something like that.
So yeah, and so basically the culture is becoming an extent of the. I mean, the language is an extent of the culture.
Very much so. I
So
agree.
when you learn a language, whether you like it or not, you're going to pick something of cultural value from that language.
Right. So multiple languages. Now that you're learning, I know some languages do have similarities. For example, like if you're learning Spanish, if you already know how to speak Italian, for example, like the Latin languages, then it's a little bit easier, I assume, to learn the other one. However, does it get more difficult the more languages you learn because there's just more vocabulary, there's more rules that you have to listen. Do you ever mix them up?
What I felt was, and I'm going to refer back to Persian because that's the last language I learned seriously.
Okay.
Is that you, as you absorb more languages, you become more sensible to like the different intricacies between languages. For example, I realized that in the verbs, how you use the verbs, it's very similar. Like the tenses was like, oh, the Persians use tenses somewhat like the French do. So it was like a point of familiarity that I kind of like recognize straight on. So you're becoming more and more receptive that different languages work different ways.
Right.
So you're not fazed by that anymore.
Okay.
On the contrary, you're receptive towards it. So as you learn more language, more vocab, it kind of like it's just more variety to enjoy, basically.
Okay.
And I think because it's just different, like a lot of people saying speaking or learning Bahasa Indonesia is quite easy because we don't have the female, male, kind of like French, you have the male and female and whatnot. So I guess every language is different, right?
Yeah.
In terms of how you learn the language itself. Now, we know that in Indonesia, we have many native languages.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, I could speak Sundanese, Javanese, I could do Minang, or like you said, Padanese, or is that, can I call myself a polyglot?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Is that not a dialect?
No.
No, because it's a different language.
It's a legit language that stands on its own with its own cultural value and
Right.
all different. So and it's like it's not only a dialect is basically a core language that kind of spans out. When you talk about Minang, Javanese, they stand on their own.
Okay, it's completely different.
They're not related to a language. So you can be a polyglot, but knowing only local languages.
Right.
Legit.
And it's already there. I mean, there are so many languages that we can really choose from Indonesia itself.
Agree. So what would you have, like, maybe perhaps some tips for those that are planning to learn? It's just, it seems like a huge undertaking.
And usually people said that once you're a child, it's much more easier for you to adapt language, right? Do you think this is a myth or this is actually fact?
I think the reason why, so there's actually a study that says that age does not really truly matter. And the reason why we have this perception that kids learn easier is because they don't think as much as adults do.
Yeah, less in their brain.
So they're just, you can throw a 7-year-old into class and be like, but at the end of the week he learns French because what else is gonna do? But when we are being like put in a language class, besides having jobs or lives to decide, we're intimidated by the idea of like having to be put in this vulnerable position where you don't know anything.
That's true.
And we're bothered by that. And I think that's the mental barrier. And it's multiplied by this certain Indonesian mindset that again, malu-malu. You don't like things that are way outside of your comfort zone. But it's a mental barrier that if you brutally push down, I think it's beneficial.
And by the way, kids also aren't afraid of making mistakes. So if they say something wrong, they don't care, right?
They don't think as much. Exactly. We think too much.
Gangsy, we call it.
Yeah.
So, Deepa, thank you so much. If you guys are willing to learn more, you guys can check out their community as well, www.polyglotindonesia.org, or just check out their Instagram under the same name. Thank you for coming by. Real quick question before we go. I know we're running out of time. What's the third, because it's 3 languages to be a polyglot.
Yeah.
Most people, I assume, part of the community know English and Bahasa.
Yeah.
What's the third most common language that people know?
French and German.
French and German.
You should brush up your French.
I should.
Yes, you will.
High school was a long time away, so yeah.
One micro point left. It is somewhat of a mistake to refer to Indonesian as Bahasa because Bahasa means language in Indonesian.
It means language, correct. It's a
so it would be like, you just say Indonesian simply.
Oh, okay.
I always felt that way too, but I just kind of followed everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for correcting.
You're welcome, you're welcome.
All right, Deepa, it's been great to chat with you. Wish we had more time, but we do have to take another short break. But when we return, in case you joined us late, we'll recap some of our earlier stories from around the world when we return. Stay tuned.
Say that in Canadian, please.